find a way.
So I attended class night, which is like honors night for Tennessee High a few weeks ago. And one of the students there did a video presentation. It's like, I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it's the
Viking Hope.
The Viking Hope Award. And it was like the most improved student. And I happened to know this student when he was little. And so I was familiar with the story, and it was so cool to hear him articulate like the past 4 years and his like path to success. He graduated, I think he was graduating early,
He did.
Successful with a GPA, had a career, had plans for the future. Like, it was so cool, and I was so proud of like the school system and the community of Bristol, because I know how narrow that path to success was for him, and it wasn't gonna be just one person that made that happen. And so to see that, like, he got a standing ovation.
I know, that was just amazing.
It was the highlight. Like, it was the highlight of the night. You have all these like super successful kids with 4.0 GPAs going to Columbia and all these places, but it was him that got the standing ovation.
Yes. And it was so powerful that his peers recognized how far he had come and appreciated that about his story.
So how did he get that? Did people vote for that, or was that faculty?
That was actually for the past 3 years since Viking Academy has been in existence. During class night, we've had one of our students who has given the Viking Hope speech.
Okay.
And it was just somebody who has overcome a lot of life obstacles, very different circumstances in each student who has done the speech for us. But just showing, that there is a way out when you're not where you want to be, when you, feel like things are really difficult and your life circumstances aren't what they need to be. There's still hope. There are people who want to help you, and there's a way to get out of that. And so this year, when the guidance counselor came and asked me who I wanted it to be this year, we really had a couple that could have been good candidates, but I thought Austin had made the most significant change to becoming successful and becoming just that stand-up person that his mom always knew he could be. That the people closest to him really wanted him to see that he could be. So we asked him if he would, and he agreed, and that's how he got that part.
He gave a great. It was inspirational. I think not just for me, but for a lot of people. I get emotional just thinking about it because I know his story. But man, it got me interested. Like, what's going on? Because he kept referencing Viking Academy. I'm like, I don't know what Viking Academy is. What has been going on the past 3 years with this kid? And so I started asking questions, and those questions lead to you, who you are the administrator of this program that did like amazing things with this kid, but I am sure there's lots of stories like that. And as I understand it, this has only been around for a few years. So this is a new program.
And brand new. This is our third year. It's actually our second year off campus. So the first year we were kind of a program with a school within a school concept at Tennessee High. And then we were graciously donated the building on the Volunteer Parkway. Mitch Walters and the Friendship family gave that building to us. It underwent renovations through a grant, the Innovative High Schools grant, and our district felt like the capital improvements, money that went to that was well worth it. So October of 22 is when we actually went off campus and went into the building. So it is a brand
Wow.
new concept, and one that's very different when you think about an alternative school. Most of the time, it's either very it has a negative connotation, and it is very restrictive as to what the students are allowed to do, what they're able to do, or it's very CTE driven. So the students are on computers for any academic work, and then they are just doing, work in their field. So in automotive or in welding or in machining. And ours really is kind of a mixture. And instead of being more restrictive, we're really trying to meet the students where they are and give them more opportunities. So nothing that we do is because we think that they need to do it. We really look and ask them, what do you want to do? And then we figure out how we can help them do that. So, for example, most of our students, when we first started, had no concept of they wanted to do anything past high school education-wise. But, as we started talking to them and talking to them about things like TCAT, the Tennessee College for Applied Technology, or Northeast State Community College, and taking them on tours, one or two students who were interested in a specific area, and we would take them and they could see, this is the program that you could do, and this is how long it would take, and this is what you would be able to do afterwards. And people were then seeing them at that level and shaking their hand and getting to know them, and they could see themselves there. For the first time, they could see themselves in some job or some place other than what maybe they had always thought that they would be.
So was the light went on for them by seeing the opportunity or by seeing people that were doing that?
It was probably both. It was probably a combination for some. It was, yes, seeing that there is a way to get there. A lot of our students are have specific barriers that they and their family face in order for them to, go on after high school. And one of those barriers is transportation. So that is a huge barrier for most of our students, most of our families. If the family has a vehicle, they only have one vehicle. So whoever is working has to use that vehicle. So they're not then able to think about, oh, well, I can drive 20 miles to the airport to go to Northeast State, or I can drive to Elizabethton and take classes 4 days a week there. Those options, they don't see those options because it's not readily available. Yeah. And so we work on, there's NetTrans, and NetTrans, you can pay $7 a day and you can get there, and we can show you how to do that. Or,
and is NetTrans public? Is that?
That's part of the Bristol transportation system. It's outside of the regular bus system. Okay. And if you have a specific job or school that you need to go to kind of every day, you can be on that schedule and you can, pay for that service.
And that's subsidized by the city. Okay. And so you plug them into that. They probably don't know that exists.
Right. And then other times it's, if we can find something that's a little bit closer, like, maybe they're not able to get all the way to Elizabethton, but someone they know lives in Kingsport or lives close and can give them a ride. There are programs in Kingsport that they've started. So we just really work on if this is something that you're interested in, let us help you figure out how you can do that. For some of our students, the biggest obstacle is really they don't have a driver's license. And you think of, when I was 15, when I was 16, I was ready to get my driver's license, and I had parents who took me to the DMV, and I got my driver's license.
On your birthday, not the day after your birthday.
You get that first job. For a lot of our students, they don't have that. They don't have anyone to take them to the DMV. They don't have anyone, they don't have a vehicle to go to the DMV in. And if you've ever been to the DMV, you know that it's not always a one-time deal. Like, you go and you have all the documents you need, and here you go, and you get there the first time. So we have had to really, sometimes we have to go 2 or 3 times. Sometimes we have to go to a courthouse and get a birth certificate. Sometimes we have to go to or the health department and get a birth certificate in the courthouse to get papers that document who the guardian is. And sometimes we have to have an affidavit, teenage affidavit, notarized and signed so that someone other than their parent can take them and give them permission to test. All of these things that you don't ever think about if you're not in that situation. But if you don't have a driver's license, then people can't really hire you above board. Those that they end up then in jobs that, like, somebody's uncle needs something done, and you can work with them for a while and they'll pay you in cash, but they're not, plugged into the system. They're not paying taxes. They're not, building anything in Social Security. They don't have an ID or a way to get a bank account. So it just kind of compounds. And so what we do is we try to break down those barriers and give them an opportunity that most people take for granted.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting. I mean, I'm trying to wrap my head around being in that situation, because you take it for granted. But without transportation, your world is so small, and your opportunities are so small, and I suspect your dreams probably shrink to that size as well.
Yes. Yeah.
So what I heard you say is, like, part of the challenge is getting them to dream a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, again, a lot of times our students only know what they see. So their family members have been in jobs, a lot of fast food jobs, and maybe their family member, a mother, a father, older brother, somebody is in management, restaurant management, but for the most part, they're not those jobs that will earn a living wage. That's what we're trying to help them access. What can we do to get you to the point where you could earn a living doing this? And they haven't had that opportunity to see what those options are. We have a program called RWI, Ready Workforce Institute. And that program was kind of born out of also a need that we saw. Our students, if they got a job, a lot of times they were getting fired from that job. And we didn't help them get the job, and we didn't really know what was happening, why they were being fired. And we weren't able to really help them navigate what was going on. And also, that's very disheartening. And, when you lose a job. So
there probably wasn't a lot of confidence there to start with.
Exactly.
They take a risk and fail.
Yes. And then they don't have the support. They don't have the opportunity to make it right. Yeah. So we started looking at work-based learning a little bit differently. So when you hear work-based learning, a lot of times you think of those students who have like 2 periods out of the day as a junior or senior, usually a senior, and they go to a business in the community that is tied to what they want to do. So if they're in construction, they go to a construction site or they go to a welding, facility, so a plant, manufacturer. Ours really were not able to participate in that way for a couple reasons. They did not have the space in their schedules to allow them to do that because they're behind in credits. Mm-hmm. So if you're behind in credits, you have to retake those academic credits to get what you need and not take electives, which work-based learning counts as electives. And then the other thing is they don't have transportation yet again to get to, these sites. So we sat down with some community members. It started with a conversation that we had with some members of Advanced Bristol. And we talked to them about this idea that we had. What if we have students who we feel like are ready to have some work experience on the entry level? Mm-hmm. And we partner with community members who have businesses who want to take on that job of kind of being a mentor. So our students who are in RWI, they have to be academically eligible, making progress towards graduation, behaviorally, all of that, have to have parental permission to do that. We take them out on Friday, and Friday from about 8 to 1:30 or 2, they work the entire day in this business. So it's 1 day a week, okay. And after 4 weeks, they get feedback from the employer, and we discuss that feedback with them, good and bad, and then they move to a different position or a different business.
And they do that for how long?
It's a 4-week rotation, so we had 5 different rotations this past school year. Okay. So if they're interested in automotive, Friendship Ford is a great example. So we have several of the Friendship locations. They'll go and they'll work all day on Friday for 4 weeks at this location, then they might go to a different one. Because the other thing too is they don't know what's out there even. Yeah. We had students who went to Strongwell. Strongwell's been an amazing partner with us as well. And students were like, I've driven by this, or I've been by this building. I didn't know what they did in here. And these are businesses in our community. Mm-hmm. Our students are going to be in our community. Yeah. They're not moving away. They're not our like many of our students who after college will find jobs in other locations. They're here. Yeah. So what we want to do is we want to make it mutually beneficial, and we want them to know about our community businesses and know where they can plug in. And we want our community businesses to know that we have these students who are going to be here and can be your workforce with a little help. So, that kind of on-the-job training, and it doesn't feel then like after 4 weeks, if it didn't work out, it's no big deal because you're already scheduled to go to someplace else, and it's a different experience, and nobody has to just suffer through anything for too long. It's just, if it's not your fit, we find you something else.
What you've described makes so much sense. It's so reasonable. It like the ROI on creating a path to success for one of our kids is so high for the city, right? Like that's such a great investment. It all makes sense, but every piece of what you said is difficult because the other thing that I've heard, one of the questions I asked is like, is this a normal thing for cities and school systems to do? Like this Viking Academy you guys are doing in Bristol. Mm-hmm. Is that something that's just standard in the state and there's a handbook for starting that? And what I was told is, no. This is not something that is out there, but it's so like it makes so much sense. None of what you said is easy though, right? Like, right. Where did the idea come from?
Well, it actually began. The school system was looking for kind of a new idea with alternative education, because for several years it had been off campus and it had been on campus in different locations. It had been after school, but we never felt like it was really doing what we wanted it to do, making that positive change. And about that same time, when we were having the conversations about alternative education, the state came out with the Innovative High School Grant, and that was a grant, multi-million-dollar grant from the state, specifically for high schools who wanted to try new things, who wanted to, do things differently, specifically focused kind of in the CTE area, or, success after high school in the workforce. At that same time also, there were talks with Mitch Walters, and he had, talked about donating that facility. And so it kind of all came together. We were given a $2 million grant to get started.
So was there an idea there first, and then the resources followed with the grant and the private, or was it the resources emerged and then the idea followed?
It was a little bit of both. Now, in order to apply for the Innovative High School Grant, we had to have a vision of what we would do with that.
You'd been involved before?
No.
Oh, so you're brand new to this problem.
Right. I had previously been a curriculum specialist in the system. So I was, and before that, I was an AP English teacher at Tennessee High School for many years. So
AP, just to clarify the abbreviation, AP is for the college
advanced placement, college level.
Highly functioning crowd in high school.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. Those, yes, you get college credit for
I'm
testing and
really
scoring.
Curious how this story plays out. How you go from that to.
Well, it kind of probably has to go back to my background, but the position, they got the grant. I had no part in writing the grant, didn't read the grant before we got it. That was somebody else, and I was, good job, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with me. A position came open for assistant principal in one of the schools, and I did apply for that because I've had my administrative endorsement for a while and didn't use it. I was very content and happy in my job at that time. And when the assistant principal job came open, I interviewed for it, and I didn't get it. And they came back to me with, we think actually this wasn't really for you, but we really think alternative education would be great, and you are the person we want.
What was your first thought?
Thank you. No, thank you. That's very flattering. No,
I'll stick with my college-bound English students.
Yes, I don't know. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
There, but they said at least think about it. So I did, and I talked to Kim Kirk, the principal, and she has a lot of experience in alternative education. That's where she came from, or at least part of her experience was at Science Hill doing the alternative ed program. And she actually was just really instrumental. She said, "This is what I see in you, and this is what I see it doing in this situation with these kids." And it was very, flattering that she felt like this was something, because we all know it was going to be, knew it was going to be difficult.
Huge lift.
And so for her to be able to tell me, when I worked with you on this and you did this, that's going to transfer in this way. Or when I saw how you behaved in this way.
What specifically? What skills did she see in you that thought you could pull this off?
So one of the things was, I used to be in charge of graduation. And for many, many years, I did graduation, since we started doing it outside. That's kind of when I started. So a lot of that, and that is a lot of coordinating and organizing and that kind of thing. And when I got out of that position as AP teacher and went to the district, I came back and trained the person who did it next. Well, then somebody went on maternity leave, and they were like, "We have no idea. Please come and help." And I came back and I just stepped in and did it. And she said it was like, you just took over and did what you needed to do.
Yeah.
You told us if we needed to be somewhere. You told us what we needed to do, but we didn't have to stand and tell you, okay, you do this, you do this.
Took ownership of it.
Right. And then they felt like, they could do the rest of their things, and I would be fine doing that. There was also, my husband during COVID had gotten very ill. He was actually on a ventilator for 11 days and very nearly didn't make it. And during that time, obviously it was a very difficult time. But she said, the way that you held your composure and you were able, it was kind of like the grace under fire situation. Like, you never lost it. You never lost your sense of humor. You never lost, your wanting to share, but not overburden, and those were the kinds of things that she literally picked out and said, I see that, and that is going to translate well.
You probably didn't have a chance to show those gifts teaching AP English like you do now, right?
It was very different. Yes. And I loved teaching AP English. But there was a time when my husband was in law school, we had moved to Virginia Beach, and I actually worked in a level 5 lockdown facility for juvenile sex offenders. Wow. So I kind of have experience in both ends of the spectrum. And so there's always kind of been an interest. I myself grew up in Southwest Virginia, and I was very poor growing up. So definitely, economically disadvantaged to the nth degree, and saw education as my way out and way to, independence and success. And so I have kind of always had that connection to the underdog, and that desire to help others who were in a similar situation or position.
So there's a book, Hillbilly Elegy, that's very controversial. But I think one of the things in there that I really think is he got right is because I'm from this area too. I'm first generation college student as well. Is in Appalachia, the lack of role models to lift you up to dream bigger, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, right? Like the people in your circle when your world is so small, like who is your mentor to lift you beyond that small little world? And when you have it, you take it for granted. But man, like that's a big thing. Who was it for you? Like where was there somebody?
So this is also going to kind of be out of the blue. I was actually born in Chicago, and so my mother's family was all from Chicago. We moved to Honecker, Virginia, actually, when I started school. So I was still very young. But we would go back to Chicago for vacations to see relatives every couple of years while I was growing up. And we would stay with relatives. That was our vacation, but we were just going and seeing relatives. And it was my family in Chicago that really showed me a different world. That the world was not as small as Honecker or as even the state. It was much larger. And so we would visit museums, and we would visit the sights and the skyscrapers and all
Yeah.
of that. And my uncle would take my brothers and I to his office in downtown Chicago, and show us his office, and it was just kind of like the idea that I had the opportunity to see that there was more, and
yeah.
that I could do more,
Yeah.
because I did have those people in my
Yeah.
family who were saying, you can do this. You're good at school. Just keep it up. Just keep working. You can do this. You can go to college. What do
Yeah.
you want to be? It wasn't ever, do you want to go to college? Do you think you might? It was, what do you want to do when you go to college?
The
So
higher expectations. And,
yeah,
yeah. And in some ways, you're probably fortunate to have that
absolutely.
and the opportunity to go to Chicago, because other kids in Honaker probably weren't making trips to Chicago.
Right. So that was
Yeah.
a very stark
Yeah.
difference.
I've told people before, like, when you're raising kids, like, there's so many different ways that you can spend money on kids. And I think I think the best investment I ever made in my kids was any travel. Like, anytime you can especially when you live in a place like East Tennessee, where people tend to look the same, and it's just different. Any chance to take your kids to travel, like, spend that money.
Oh,
Like,
yes.
even save the competitive sports money. If you only have $1,000, spend it on traveling, because it's life-changing for kids.
Absolutely. It does expand their world.
Yeah.
Just immensely.
Yeah. But we're talking about kids in Bristol that world is so small because they don't have transportation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm so glad I'm talking to you directly, because, the big conversations about, oh, what's wrong with our kids? Like, they're lazy or whatever. But that's not it. It's
Right.
like, there are specific problems like transportation that unless we solve those, you can't solve the other problems,
And
right?
for most people, they're not even a consideration.
Yeah.
For most people, the idea of not having a driver's license, not having a car, that is just so foreign to them that they don't see it as a problem that needs solving.
Skip over that.
Because for them it doesn't.
Yeah.
But that's one thing I talk about whenever I talk to city officials and even state officials, that one of the biggest boundaries is transportation. That's a huge obstacle. The other is all of the hoops that you have to jump through to get a driver's license or even just an ID.
Mm-hmm.
It can be overwhelming. I mean, so going to the DMV is overwhelming, and I've got advanced degrees.
Mm-hmm.
If you're 17 years old
Sure.
and you have no other support, like, you just want to give up.
Yeah.
And no wonder. So we try to always be that support for them and help them get what they need. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out together.
So back to the original vision. Like, you did not know these things on day one.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So they choose you to head up this program. They have big plans for it. They might have some grants behind it. They choose you to do it. Your day one, you don't know the answers to any of the problems. So how do you start?
So one of the best things I did was surround myself with great people.
How big of a team did you have?
The first person I hired myself was our career counselor, Ann Oakley.
Okay.
And she has been phenomenal and has helped me with that vision. And then the teachers that we have about 15 adults in the building. And we have a full-time SRO. So that was somebody that I was in on the hire. I was able to pick and choose.
Did you have these resources at the beginning, or has it grown?
We have had them pretty much from the beginning.
Okay.
The people we had from the beginning, the facilities, the building is what we had to wait on.
So you were doing this at the regular high
in-house,
school,
yes.
but you had I guess the grant resources that provided the team.
Yes,
And
and we share faculty members with the high school because we're taking part of the high school students. We took one of their English teachers, one of their science teachers, one of their math teachers. And the big thing that I said to Kim Kirk about this was, I want people who want to be there. This has got to be something that they want to do.
Yeah.
If that's not the case, then it's not going to be, be beneficial to anyone. And I've been fortunate that by and large, we have people who have a huge heart for these students and want to be there, because it is emotionally exhausting.
Yeah.
On some days there's a high level of stress. The kids have a high level of stress. They live in a high level of stress when they don't know if they're gonna, their family's gonna have a place to stay.
Yeah.
We have so many kids that, that really should be classified as homeless or would be, but would never call themselves homeless because they have a friend that they're living with.
Wow.
Or, they'll stay with this person for a couple of months and then they'll move to this person. But they're not homeless because they have somewhere to stay. But you and I would never see that as, the same thing.
Yeah, we take the car for granted. If we don't have a car, we take Uber for granted.
Yeah.
There's an app for that.
Yeah.
Definitely take the home for granted, right? But like those are so many problems. Those are so many problems to solve. But like getting that team, like you said, the key was to have the right people. But like in my experience, when there's a vision, the right people show up. And so, but that was a big investment from the school.
Absolutely.
Even if they had the money, like you're talking about taking resources from teaching resources, which are precious, and devoting them to high-risk kids.
Yes.
Is that just a function of like the leadership really having really wanting to solve this problem and invest in it?
I absolutely believe that that's the case. And once they saw some of the results, I mean, it's you can't deny the results.
Yeah.
It's great to have that desire to help people, but if you don't have numbers to back it up, if you don't have the stories to tell about the success, if you don't have things to show people, it's not going to be sustained.
Yeah.
So I've said very often that this is an expensive program. The cost of this program is expensive because we have a higher adult to student ratio. We have a separate facility. We have our own SRO. We have our own nurse. We have someone from Frontier Health. It's an expensive program. But if you think about the cost of losing these students, of them having no vocation, of them being a statistic, that's expensive.
Yeah.
That's where you're going to spend money.
Yeah. That math makes sense, but there are cities, the world is littered with cities that don't make the choice to invest in these kids, right?
Right.
And Bristol did.
Yes.
So you've got your team, you're on day one, you don't have space yet. You don't have experience in this. You're trying to but you surround yourself with some people that might, but I suspect nobody has the answers at this point. So how does your team of 15, and there's no manual, for this, right?
No. I mean, we tried finding other programs that were similar that we could, talk to somebody about it. But every time we found a program, it was something like it was something different. It wasn't what we thought we needed for our students. It wasn't what our students needed.
Yeah.
So we'd have to, kind of make the best decision we could. here's an example, and we kind of we pivot when we have to pivot. If it's not working, we change it. So my initial great idea, when we began, was in order to get our students motivated to work, we were going to have Flex Friday. And so similar, like if they've got a job and they've done all their work Monday through Thursday and they've got a job on Friday, we're going to let them go to work on Friday. And they're going to, then work earlier in the day, and they're going to earn money, and they're going to see this as beneficial, and everybody's going to want to go out and get jobs. And then we're going to do in-services on Friday when none of the students are there, and we'll do training and really, grow our people. That did not happen. So our students, some of them already had jobs. The ones who didn't, again, we just thought they'd go out and get a job. Well, there are very few jobs that you can get without a vehicle. So we realized very quickly that probably wasn't the model that was going to work for us. And then we shifted to a more structured program like RWI, where we provide the transportation. We take them there in the morning. We pick them up in the afternoon. We provide them a bag lunch. We have a uniform for them. That then is what we landed on based on the needs of our students.
So is this you and your 15 team members that are providing like the resources to get the driver's or the birth certificate to get the driver's license?
So we have had some, as I said early on, Advanced Bristol has been very helpful and supportive, both financially and also just helping us kind of create our image, really, a logo for RWI.
And that's just a local nonprofit that you've partnered with.
Yes. And so they actually have most recently given us a donation of $10,000. And that $10,000, various business people within that organization had set aside money specifically for workforce development. And this certainly does fall under that. So we took that money. What we do with that was provide our students compensation for working. So if they work a full day, they get a $50 Visa gift card that they can use however they'd like. So that money went to buy the Visa gift cards. So then if the student doesn't have a bank account, we don't have to worry about it. They can still have the gift card.
We take bank accounts for granted as well. Yeah.
Again, yes, but you have to have an ID to get a bank account.
Yeah.
So we have had some donations in that way. They have been very generous to us. I sometimes say we run on yard sales and Papa John points, because we do have we had a yard sale last year, and the proceeds went to things like student celebrations and miscellaneous costs. So when we take a student to the DMV, there's the cost of taking the test, getting the license or permit, and then getting them something to eat while they're out. And, those things that it's really difficult to write a PO for a McDonald's meal or for $8 charge at the DMV. So that gave us some kind of working money to work on, to use for those incidental things. Because if we didn't have that, our people 100% were paying out of their pocket, because they just wanted to do that for our kids.
So you've got this team. You guys are learning on the fly. Do you have students while you're building this thing, or did you have?
Absolutely.
So there was no 1 year runway. We're going to figure this out and then bring the students in. So you were literally just learning on the fly. And so did that team? How did you manage that? Did you have like weekly powwows where you brought them together and got feedback and came up with ideas?
It wasn't weekly, but whenever we would have a district in service, I would try to make it a point that my team would get together separately from Tennessee High to talk about things that were specific to
Yeah.
to us. And I'm always very open to suggestions if I felt like, hey, this is not working for me. What are your suggestions? What are your ideas?
Yeah.
And we would talk through some things. One of the most productive things that we did, we spent an entire day this year. It was on an in-service day, and we went through the list of our students with every staff member that was there that day. So educational assistants, secretaries, everybody who was there, teachers, all of us. And we started at the A's, and we said, call this person out. What's going on? They're doing great. They're, passing their class. I've seen a big change. Great. Move on to the next person. Well, they're failing this class. Really? They're failing my class too. Have you talked to the parent? Yeah, something's going on. This is, sister left or something,
Yeah.
So we did that for the entire student body.
So it wasn't as if one teacher had ownership responsibility for a student. It's like your team of 15 had
Absolutely.
ownership of every kid there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. Now, and that would be really hard to do in typical public education, right? Like,
Oh, sure.
you've got a unique thing here, and I can see how that would be so valuable in the village, right?
Yes.
Like, not everybody's going to make a connection with every kid.
Right.
So when you talk about, let's go back to the kids. Like, we could probably do a whole nother series of podcasts on the anxieties for your AP English kids. Like,
Right.
we shouldn't take that for granted because
Yes.
their lives are complicated and difficult
Yes.
as well. But these are different. Your kids now have different anxieties. What would people be, apart from the transportation, what would people be surprised? I guess what surprised you, because you're new to this world.
Yeah. It surprises me daily what some of our students have to live with or deal with. Last year we had a student who was himself, his younger sister, and his mother, and they were living in a hotel. Mom was working full time, but had gotten behind on rent, ended up in a motel. They lived there for a couple of months, and then she was diagnosed with cancer for the second time. That was obviously very difficult. In this time, they're still having transportation issues, and the car was breaking down, and then it was getting towed, and then there was the cost of trying to get it out of, the impound lot to get it someplace, and then all of that. And it, as it turned out, she passed away very shortly after that. So you have a barely 17-year-old son who wanted to take care of his middle school age sister, and really no family support that was that he felt comfortable with. There were family members, but there were strained relationships. There was an older sister, and she kind of stepped back into the picture initially to help, but that turned out very badly. She ended up taking the one vehicle that the family had and left. She had some drug abuse issues herself. The student was living with his girlfriend's parents, living in that house, and just a precious young man. And so he actually ended up working with one of our RWI members at Turtleson, and he was working every Friday, but then they hired him to work Mondays and Fridays. And so he was able to do that 2 days a week to earn some money.
Yeah.
And he then worked full time over the summer.
And he's
And
still in high school.
he graduated this year.
But at the time,
At
he
the
was
time,
still
he's
in
still
high
in
school.
high school. He's still in high school. So he, and they kind of took him in because that's a smaller company, and they kind of, there were ladies there who kind of mothered him and looked out for him. And like I said, he was doing a great job. He was trained on a machine that's, fairly complicated, and he did a wonderful job and has been employed this whole time. Is getting ready to go to TCAT to work on cars because that's what he wants to do. But he now also has a bank account. That was a situation where if you're not 18, you cannot get a bank account without an adult. So we have had situations where our students get a bank account at 17. They're working at fast food 30 hours a week. They have their mother on it, father, somebody on it with them because they have to. That person, like the adults, wages get garnished for whatever reason. Well, all the money's taken out of that child's account because that mother or father's name is on there, and there's nothing you can do. So it requires an adult to be on the account. So I was actually the adult on his account until he turned 18, so that he didn't have to worry about somebody having access that didn't need access. We were able to get him signed up for Social Security survivor benefits. So he and his middle school daughter, his middle school sister, were receiving benefits that mother had worked for. She worked, up until she could work no longer. So those were benefits that they should have.
Yeah.
And so we were able to help him navigate that, so that he's in a place now where he's going to start TCAT, and he's going to probably transition to a job in the automotive industry while he's doing TCAT, and then get a position where he's going to be, making a living wage. But those are the kinds of things at 17 that some of our students are dealing with, and it's very difficult for them to ask for help. So you have to have that really close relationship with them so they know that you're safe. A lot of our students also have a mistrust of authority. So that's very important for us to be, different.
Yeah.
We approach everything a little bit different. Our building doesn't look like a school. It's not intimidating for parents to come to our building because it doesn't look like a school. It's someplace that I can go there.
Yeah.
I can go talk to somebody there. So.
Wow. The anxieties, but he also had teenage anxieties that any teen,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
Like all that stuff that teenagers deal with, plus all of this extreme. And I guess every kid in your program has a story. They might not all be as extreme as that, but they're all full of. So you were surprised by just the level of anxiety and stuff.
Yes.
That they had to deal with.
Yes, it's the mental health issues are prevalent. And it's not just with our students by any means, but our students, I feel like, do not have access to the right, the treatments and the help necessarily. Right. They don't know how to get that, or they don't have insurance to pay for that. And so that compounds the issue, that much more. So we have students who suffer from anxiety, students who suffer from depression. We have students who are dealing with a lot more than substance abuse, family members who are dealing with all of those things as well.
There's just so many reasons that they would fail in the typical high school track. Right.
Right. Through no fault. I don't want it to seem as though I'm saying there's something wrong with Tennessee High, because Tennessee High is a fabulous high school. I worked there. I loved it. It is great for so many of our kids. It is just what they need.
Yeah.
But there's a handful of kids, there's a percentage of our student body who just don't operate that way. And for so long, they have been told, this is the only path. This is the only school. This is the only way. Either figure it out or don't, but this is all we got for you.
Yeah.
And we've finally gotten to that point where we say, you know what? That's not the only way. We do have a way. We'll figure it out with you, and we'll make it work with you.
So you've got your team together. The students are already there. You're starting to you're figuring all this stuff out on the fly. But I'm gonna guess the most important piece to this is building a culture.
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned, like, they've got to feel safe. Like, it can't look like a school where the authority figures are intimidating. And so was that the hardest part about having it embedded in the regular school, is you didn't have your own space?
Absolutely.
And without space, it's really hard to create a culture if you don't have space.
A separate identity. Yeah.
So tell me about what you learned was so important about the culture and the challenges there.
So while we were at Tennessee High, it was really important that we kind of stayed together. So we were in a specific part of the high school, and Tennessee High is a building that's been there a long time. So the facilities were not new, and the area that we had room to be in was not the best. It was we tried to make it. It was painted. They painted it for us and tried to do as much as they could, but still, people saw it as, that they're just pushing us over here in this area,
like second-class citizens.
Right. And our kids were very used to feeling that.
I'm sure.
Like, even if people didn't articulate that, that's what they felt. That's what they felt people were saying to them in so many more ways than verbally. So when we were in this new facility, this beautiful facility
this was a car dealership.
Yes. That was completely
moved,
renovated.
And then they gave it back. They gave it to you to turn into this. Okay.
Yes. So it had been a Volvo dealership.
Yep.
And our offices are right where the showroom was, for anybody who's familiar. And so when all of that was being built out, and we were choosing all of these wonderful new furniture and technology, when the students came in there and saw that this was for them, that was a change. That was somebody telling them, you're worth it. Now, as much as we would tell them, you're worth it, you are just as good as anybody else, you don't believe that if you're still in that physical environment.
It's just
that
words.
Seems less than. So having that physical environment was very important. But it's also, what we work on culture every day. And I am, although I absolutely love my students, and I am very compassionate, and I understand that they're dealing with these very difficult things, I still have expectations. And I am doing them no favors by allowing them to get by with things just because they have a hard life, So there's kind of that tough love idea. And you have to know, when to do what. A lot of times our students might become very upset, and they might blow up, have this big blow up and be, yelling and cursing. That's not the time to say, hey, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. You give them a safe space to release that, let's get you to a place. I can see you're upset. Let's get you to a place. We're not going to do this out here in
Yeah.
front of everybody. But once they calm down, then you can have the conversation with them. Then you can say, what happened in that classroom? What went on? Well, they said this, and it made me think that they were, feeling some sort of way or calling me this. Now, is that really, when you look back on it, do you think that is really the case? Or was that really something you should have said to the teacher? Once they can calm down and get out of that emotional state, they process it and they know when they've done wrong.
They're reasonable.
Absolutely. You can't process when somebody is, way up there. So I tell my teachers very often, consequences delayed is not consequences denied. So just because in that moment I don't swoop in and send this kid home out of school suspension doesn't mean that they're not going to get consequences, but I'm not going to escalate the situation further. I'm going to do what I need to do to get this student to a point where he can hear what I'm saying, so we don't go through this over and over again. We're going to figure out why it happened, fix that, and then we're going to deal with, well, there's consequences for when you do that.
Did you know that? Like, I think that's so valuable, and that's applicable in so many places. Like, the when is important, and I love that consequences delayed or not consequences denied. Like, it's the when that's important. Did you know that on day one, or is that something that this experience has really taught you?
I think I had experienced some of that in my when I worked in the facility. There was training there on de-escalation, and there was dealing more so, dealing with that very emotionally kind of charged atmosphere, and so there was definitely some training there, but in general, just in observing other people and other administrators and other situations, even if you win, you lose. If you are in a shouting match with a teenager, a student, even if you win momentarily, you lose overall.
Yeah.
So it's not ever in your best interest to try to one up. It's not ever in your best interest to try to, go to that next level. And like, something that Austin had mentioned, it wasn't that he was with, magically all of his issues didn't disappear, and he had those moments when he did things that he shouldn't have done. But he recognizes the consequences I got were earned. I earned those.
Yeah.
She didn't give me anything that wasn't fair.
Yeah, and it wasn't just one learning lesson. It was incremental,
right,
over several years that made the difference. And
right,
consistency.
Yeah.
But I think what you said about refusing to lower expectations it's got to be an important part of that culture. And just from coaching, I've learned that kids will meet whatever expectations you set. It might take longer than you want it to. You might not have time in a season to get them there. But if you lower those expectations, they will meet those too.
Right.
So how have you, has that been a challenge to maintaining high expectations is a lot of work.
Yes,
right? It's
it is.
so much easier just to lower the expectations and get through the day because your life has to be exhausting.
Yes.
How have you guys, like, how do you maintain that culture of holding high expectations?
I think it comes with the successes. You know, when we see that things are going well, and we kind of, sometimes we don't even realize how well they're going, and we're like, you know, things have been okay here for a while. We never, what I say, use the Q word, quiet. We never say that word. You never say, it's just like, same, I think the police and hospitals say the same thing. You never say, boy,
Right.
it's quiet here, because then it won't be.
Yeah.
But it's when we see, and sometimes, honestly, it's like the strangest of things, taking them on a field trip and just being ready for the worst. Just like, oh my gosh, what might happen, and trying to plan, and then they act beautifully, and then you're like, oh, they can do it. They absolutely can do this.
Yeah.
They may have to be explicitly taught how, but they can do that. So, sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it's putting them in a situation, and I don't know how it's going to go, but we're going to try it.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have the expectation that you're going to, do this or not do that, and let them do it. And it has been very predominantly, they have risen to that level of expectation. And like I said, it's not immediate, and it's not 100%, but that's part of it. That's part of the respect. I'm giving you the respect of expecting you at this level, because I know you can do that. I'm not letting you off the hook. I'm not disrespecting you by thinking you're less. Like, that's part of it.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of these kids have grown up with low expectations, probably low expectations for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's got to be exhausting, though. Like,
it is. It can be.
Yeah, but I think that's the other part of the village, having the village and the team.
And my team, I have to say, it's an amazing group of people. We have a group chat, and we, endlessly send each other silly memes, or, just funny things to lighten it. And in the afternoon, when our students leave, we often have what I call the impromptu faculty meeting. The students are gone, but it's not time for us to leave, so we're kind of all hanging around and talking. And that is the best time to kind of decompress, because we're sharing things that happened, funny or not, stressful or not, kind of, joking with each other, getting it off our chest, off our plates, so when we go home to our families, it's not as heavy.
Yeah.
Because it certainly can be, and you can burn out if you don't have that. So, being a part of a group of people who really enjoy working with one another, and who can laugh with one another, and who can, know that if today is a really hard day, tomorrow's not going to be so hard.
Yeah.
It's just not. And we got through it. And we've gotten through some very difficult situations and issues. And at the end of it, when I look back and say, look, I am so proud of y'all. You guys did everything right in this situation. This was a critical situation, and you did everything right. Or, wow, was this a learning experience?
Yeah.
That was a high stress situation, but I really appreciate the way you did this. And next time, let's think we might need to do this as well.
Yeah. And I was so, like, graduation day, when you're, like, I was so proud. Like, just sending these kids that are high-risk kids out into the world with the skills and dreams and a support system there's a path to success that has to be immensely rewarding. Like, probably way more rewarding than your AP students going on to Columbia or Yale. Different, but
it is. It's different, and they're going to be successful no matter what. I'm just kind of there helping along the way.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely when students. The funniest thing is, a lot of times, one of my teachers, Erin, will see something that a student has posted on Facebook, and she'll screenshot it and send it to me, and it will just be something like, can't believe senior year is over. Never thought I'd make it. so thankful for Viking Academy and what that gave me. Just they'll say something like that, not to get anything from, any of us, but that's their true feeling.
Yeah.
And they're putting that out there. And it's so genuine. And that kind of thing just keeps you going. It absolutely keeps you going. It's not, the outcomes are not always going to be exactly what we want them to be. But I can't imagine the outcomes of our students without us being there.
Yeah.
It just changes so much what their future would be.
Yeah. Well, it's true. It's extraordinary what you guys are doing. I'm so proud and just so happy that you're doing this work. And I got through this thing without crying because like of all the this is like our 10th podcast, and we've had some really successful people on here with great stories, but you are doing the more important work than any of them.
That's very kind. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you for letting me share our story.
Thanks.
Find a way.